So it's our first lesson in Web Project Studio. So I want to go over the course. So everything is on Blackboard for you. So this class is pretty different from the other ones. You know, the other classes we have, including our Thursday class, which most of you are in as well. You know, mostly we're focusing on back-end web development. This class is what we call your capstone course. So we really we're taking all the different things you guys have learned in all your different courses, and you're putting them all together and working in teams to build a plan, design, and build a project out over the entire semester. So kind of our focus, this class is a lot more of a conversation where we're going to have a lot of discussion about, you know, how things could and should be done in terms of planning and building a project. So kind of the goal of it is to give you a full view from start to finish, from when we first sit down with a client and talk about what they need until we have something ready. What does that whole process look like? So we've got all semester, we've got 13 weeks to do this. I will record the classes, but like I said, we're going to have lots of discussion. So best if you can be here. I know it's Monday morning. I didn't schedule the time. I tried to push it back as far as I could push it back for people. So we'll typically be an hour to 2 hours Monday. We won't be longer than that. Okay, so what I want to do today is kind of get organized, go over, plan for the course, and answer any questions you have, and just do a brief introduction. So we'll start each week at 9. There is no textbook for the course. So again, our focus is really on the process. So part of my goal is most of you are going to graduate when this semester's over. If you were to meet somebody who asked you to do a web project for them, that the goal is you would understand how are you going to tackle that project. I know that you have the technical skills to do the design work, do the development work, but this course is around all the other things. So how do we take those skills and actually deal with our client, learn about what it is they want? And yes, it is hung, and we're going to talk about that. Absolutely. That's a big part of it, right? So not only are we looking at the process, but for sure, teamwork essentials. And we're going to talk specifically about this today because that's one of the big challenges. Is working with, working with other people, right? So best way, obviously, to get a hold of me is email. I've also put up in the syllabus morning routine, I put up my LinkedIn page. I think most of us are connected on LinkedIn already, and the YouTube channel. So everything I post for you, it will be on Blackboard. We'll talk a lot about real world context and examples. I'm going to give you lots of scenarios. I mean, I've been doing this. I've been a web developer since 1999. It's a long time, 22 years in the industry. So a lot of the scenarios I'm going to give you are real scenarios that I've faced dealing with clients, coworkers, bosses over the years. I'll try to be really clear about my expectations. And in general, by email, just a reminder, typically if you email me Monday to Friday, I'll respond within 24 hours. I don't try to get off my computer when I can on the weekend. So if you email me over the weekend, you probably aren't going to get a response till Monday. I'm also taking a couple of graduate classes at night. So typically I'm not checking my email in the evening. So if you email me in the evening, you can typically expect a response the next weekday. So make sure you follow everything up on Blackboard, that your team submits all the assignments, submit them on time to get the highest marks possible. I have been teaching this class, I think, since 2012 now, or 2013. The only people who haven't passed the class, hi Justin, welcome, either didn't submit assignments or we had plagiarism issues where teams got 0. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to strongly encourage you if you can. I know it's Monday morning, but join the WebEx sessions. You're not going to get as much out of the course, morning braid, and if you're doing this asynchronously because you're working as a team and we need to have discussion. So that's going to be a lot more challenging if you're not here. My office hours, Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, Okay, Justin, maybe I could ask you just to hang on to that question just for now. Okay, but happy to talk about it. Morning, Maggie. And I'm still using the Calendly booking system. So if you need an appointment, it's not as common in this class that people need office hours appointments, but you can book a 15-minute appointment over at Calendly. So there are no tests or exams in this class, none at all. Okay. So here are the assignments. Your first assignment I'm actually going to give you today, and that's where you create a contract for your team. So I'm going to provide you some guidance, but you guys will set out some rules right at the beginning of the semester. How is your team going to work? How are you going to solve problems? How are you going to make decisions? Okay. And that agreement will be due next week at the start of class. And it's a group submission. One person per group needs to submit on Blackboard. Okay. We're going to have regular team meetings. So in class, we'll use the breakout rooms and I'll sit in with each team fairly regularly to check in and see how your progress is going. And those meetings, just being here and participating in those meetings is 15% of your grade. Okay. Your first assignment is creating a project proposal, and that will include a budget. Unfortunately, you don't get paid for the work in this class, but one of the most important things is learning how to make a budget, how to cost out a project. So you're going to come up with a proposal that includes a budget as if you were going to charge the client. Assignment 2 is creating the specifications. So the proposal is kind of like the high level, the big picture of what the application is going to look like. The specification is then taking that big picture and laying it out very specifically as to all the exact things that you guys, all the features your application is going to have. And then within those specifications, you can start to prioritize them and assign them to different people. So you have 2 weeks to do assignment 1. You'll have 2 more weeks to do assignment 2. And I'll show you some samples of really good past submissions I've gotten in previous years. Your then assignment 3 is you're going to create mock-ups, so a design concept. And then you're going to have a brief presentation in class where each team will have a few minutes just to show and kind of talk through, explain their design concept to the rest of the class. And then assignment 4 is due at the end of the semester in April, and that's your prototype. It may not be a fully production-ready web application, but it should be close. It should have the functionality, most of the functionality you've outlined in your proposal should be included, and then you'll do our last class is each team is going to do a demo of their application, show their work. So you do need to get a 50. I want everybody to pass because this class only runs once a year. So if you do not get a passing grade, you have to wait an entire year to do it again. So I would prefer everyone just does it once. Okay. And there's no makeup assignments being offered at the end. You have to submit things when they're due. As you know, late submissions are reduced by 20% per calendar day. If you need an extension, I need to know in advance, please, and there should be a valid reason why. Generally, extensions aren't usually needed in this class because, again, it's a team effort. You know, it's not just on one person. So really, you are submitting as a team. I have still had issues in the past before with plagiarism in this class. I've had teams that plagiarized off the internet, and I've had teams that have shared work. And unfortunately, those students receive 0 for those assignments. So if you submit work that looks like another team's, we'll have a code review, and you'll need to show me that, in fact, no sharing was done. We all know each other. You guys know the rules in the classes, so probably nothing new either. So here's our schedule, which we should fairly closely be able to stick to. So your team contract or team agreement is due next week. We'll look at that a bit later today. I'm going to give you assignment 1 next week at the start of class, and your team will have 2 weeks to do it. We miss a class. For some reason, this course always gets scheduled on Mondays every year, which means we miss Family Day class. I'll give out assignment 2 before Family Day, and it's due the week after Family Day. Okay, so you'll have 2 weeks for assignment 1, 2 weeks for assignment 2. Then we come back, we're going to do a lesson on Git for Teams, which is something I know by now everybody's pretty comfortable with Git, probably on your own, but we need to look at how do we use it in a team environment. Morning, Rachel. Welcome. So you'll have 2 more weeks to work on assignment 3, your design concepts, and then on March 15th, every team will show off their design. And then we'll have some courses into March and April where we talk about things like what happens when the direction of a project changes in the middle. How do we manage clients, and talk about some common situations we might find ourselves in terms of dealing with clients. For example, what happens when a client doesn't want to pay? We'll look at quality assurance. So what things, I know we know how to build applications, but how do we make sure that they're solid? What things can we do before we put them into production to make sure that we've done a good job? And then lastly, in terms of, a really important class, one I really wish I'd had a lesson on when I was a student, is what does the launch process look like? So how do we prepare to take a development site? How do we prepare to put it into production, turn it live? What are all the things we need to do kind of before, in that lead up, during the launch, and then after the launch? There's some things we should be doing. And then our last class will be the prototype demos on April 19th. We'll talk a bit more about the project in a minute. That's a great question, Justin. Yeah, that's the exact kind of thing we're going to talk about. We probably do want to start before the launch, right? We want to do some promotion. So we should be using our customer social media channels. We might even do some kind of launch event. We might do a press release. So yeah, those are kinds of some of the things we're going to talk about in that launch and beyond class. Is exactly questions like you've raised. And I put in links here out of this about where you guys can get some support, both technical support as well as any personal support from student services, things like peer tutoring, mental health services, etc. All these links I put them in the syllabus now, so you've got one place to go to get them. So I'll talk about the teams and the project a bit more in a minute. Does anybody have any questions so far about the plan for the course? Well, let's talk about this. I've done it a few ways before, Emily. I've tried it both ways. Usually I have students decide their own teams, and we've got 20 students in the class. I've learned that 4 is a pretty good team size. I've also tried it where I have assigned the teams. I'm open to discussion around it. I could put up a quick poll. We could take a vote. Yes, we will. In fact, we will be having breakout sessions pretty much every week. So you'll be working. So you have to think about that. You'll be with your team basically all term. Okay, let me make a quick poll here. Okay. If I choose the teams, they're just going to be random. I'll just use a random group feature in Blackboard. Okay, so if you haven't voted, yeah, there's still one more person. Yes. Okay. Ivan, that's a good suggestion. You know what? I'm going to add that and we're going to revote. I'm going to put that in and sorry, let's vote again. So if you want to choose a team, you can. But yes, I would assign. I know not everybody. There's some students in class who don't really know other people in the class, so I would be making the teams. But in effect, it would be a mix of this, I guess. You could choose a team if you wanted to, and if you didn't, I would assign a team. Sorry, Ivan. I'm okay. Whoops. Let's try that. I'm going to add an answer. So, so okay. Let's try new version. So please vote again. So we're going to have teams of 4. So, Justin, are you on your computer by chance, or are you on a phone? You may not see it if you're on the phone. Huh. Okay, well, Justin, you can send me a private message with your preference. So the poll is students choose, I choose, or a combination. You choose a team if you want, and if you have no preference, I will assign you. Okay? Okay, so we've got actually 12 votes for the combination. So just before we start to kind of put the teams together, I want to point out a couple of things. Okay, so that seems to be the clear winner. So I'll close the poll. So every year that I teach the class, there are challenges in at least some of the teams. So if you look at the week 1 folder and scroll down, there's a couple items here. What could go wrong? Example 1 and 2. Excuse me. So I won't read these to you. You can read them. But if you're going to make your own team, I want you to think carefully about who you will work well with. So these are the kinds of challenges that student teams have experienced in the past in this class. So probably every year I get at least one team coming to me with issues around how they are doing the work. So keeping this in mind, some of these comments from past teams, what I will ask is, because we agreed, the majority ruled that voted to give you the chance to pick your team first. If you want to use the WebEx chat to send me a private message, so you can talk amongst yourselves. And if you have a group, even if it's not 4 people, there's a group you would like someone or you would like to work with, up to a group of 4, you can send me a private message in the WebEx chat and let me know who you'd like to work with. And even if it's one person, then maybe I can put you with some other people. I will make sure everyone is in a team. I'm just going to pause the recording right now to give you a few minutes to connect with your classmates. And if you just want me to put you in a group, you can also send me a private message and let me know that, and I will do that as well. I'm going to pause the recording for now while we work this out. My recording. So the team performance agreement you can find under assignments, and you just have to submit it, one submission on Blackboard, just by 9 o'clock next Monday, please. And I'll just make sure, you should be able to see it, but I'll make sure it's available to all the groups. It should be. And I shouldn't use the word group. I should use the word team. A group are just people who have something in common. A team, they have a specific goal they're working towards. Okay, so the document's here. So let's go over it. Pretty simple. And I can show you maybe a couple examples. Okay, so your team needs an agreement. When you're going to work with other people, you need to figure out how are we going to work together. Okay, so everybody on the team is bound by terms. It's 5% of your grade. Okay, so due next Monday, 9 o'clock. So first thing is your agreement should have a team name and logo. Okay, so you've got a week, figure out, I know there's talented designers, a lot of creative people in the class, come up with a cool name for your team if you are going to be a web development company, and a logo, right? So you guys are basically acting like your own business for the purposes of the course. Figure out roughly how much time are you going to allocate, and what are your goals? You know, if one of you wants to get a 50 in the class and the rest of the team wants to get 95, well, you're going to have to kind of reconcile those different goals. Okay. You should talk about how you're going to meet and how you're going to divide the work, as well as you should have roles. Okay. One of the failures of teams is lack of clarity about roles, who is doing what. Okay. So, for example, you might have somebody that's more focused on the design or the front end. You may have people more focused on the back end of the project. You may even have someone kind of take on the role of project manager, who kind of does the coordinating and organizing. Many of you, like Hung and Rudia, you mentioned communication. So how are you guys going to communicate? Okay. This is probably the most important part of your agreement. When you don't agree, how are you going to make decisions? Remember, you're all in teams of 4, so just taking a vote, you might have a vote of 2 and 2. So when that happens, how do you decide? Is one person in charge and they ultimately make the decision? You will have to figure that out as a team. Your dispute resolution mechanism can't be you come to me. Okay? Your agreement needs to spell it out. And Emily, I think you mentioned about, supporting each other in the project management class if someone fell behind. So you need a plan for this. This happens every time there is a team, at least one team, that's great, where somebody either just isn't doing their share of the work or for legitimate reasons is unable to do their fair share of the work. So what's the plan when that happens? Because I guarantee it's going to happen to at least one of you in the course. So plan it out ahead of time now. And also anything else that you think would be important for your team to agree on ahead of time. Okay. So, if your team has no challenges at all through the project, that's great. But most teams do. Even if everyone likes each other and gets along, there's still going to be things you don't necessarily agree on how you're going to proceed. So your team agreement lays out that framework for what are you going to do when you encounter those situations. Okay, so here's the mark. And this mark is just shared evenly. I don't need a member contributions for this part of it. Okay, so if you have a problem in your team and you come to me in the middle of the semester and say, Rich, we're having a problem, the first thing I'm going to do is say, well, what does your agreement say you should do in this situation? So I'm just going to point you back to the terms that you've all agreed to. And that's going to be your starting point for solving those problems. Let me see. I may have some samples here. I don't know I do for this one, unfortunately. I have lots of good project samples. Okay. This was one from... So here was an agreement. It was 4 pages. Right, so it's a professional looking document. They gave themselves a cool name and logo. And it's kind of a formal document. So they each said they were going to commit 8 hours, and this is how they were going to divide it up. There were 5 members in the team, so everyone was going to do about 20% of the work. Their goal was to get a mark of 90 in the course. They broke up the roles, who was going to do what, how they were going to communicate, and what would happen if somebody wasn't following their rules. So they were going to have a 3 strikes and you're out. And I have actually had the odd student be kicked out of their team. They added a few exceptions. And you could all be good that you all digitally sign it. Typically I have teams print them and physically bring a signed copy to class, but just every team member should sign it. If you haven't signed it, then you're not really bound by it. Okay, so it should be something like 3 to 4 pages. So this was a really good agreement that I kept as a sample. I think I have one more here. Right, here is another one, 3 pages. Another really strong group from a couple years ago. They set out the goals. They said they wanted to get a 90%. They set out their workload, their roles, how they would communicate, resolve disputes, and what to do when they needed help. Interestingly, both of these teams were very technically strong, did great jobs on the project, but they both had some rocky times. They had a fair bit of disagreement about who should do what and how they were going to resolve disputes. Okay, even though they were teams filled with excellent students and they did good work, the projects didn't necessarily go smoothly. There are a lot of strong opinions and maybe some struggles to compromise and to make sure that they were all on the same page. So it does happen. Okay, and I know a lot of you are friends, so the agreement is designed to help keep those friendships. Okay, it's 9:54. We're about due for a break. Are there any questions about the performance agreement assignment before we take a break? Yes, Justin, we will do that when we come back. Absolutely. I'm going to talk about the project more specifically. Great question. Thank you. We'll do that as soon as we come back. Are there any other questions about the requirements here for the agreement? Or is everybody comfortable with it? Okay. All right, it's time to stretch our legs and get out of our chairs. I'm going to stop the recording and we will come back at 10:05.